Welcome to Artflakes on CBA TV. My name is Mutiu Olawuyi. This time, we are not going to a country now. It will be very difficult to explore one country with this person that we are dealing with today. We are going into the Asian world, and we shall be dealing with Mitali Chakravarty. Meet me on the other side of the studio to get to know who is this woman. See you there. Thank you for joining us once again. This is Artflakes. If you are meeting us for the first time, the only show on CBA TV and in the entire Africa, not only in East Africa, where we discuss issues that affect humanity through literature. So this time around, we are discussing issues that affect Asian people through Mitali Chakravarty. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Before I go deeply into the exploration of our world, places she has been to, I want us to understand that Mitali has been a journalist and a creative writer since her tender age. She became a professional journalist in the 80s. And then she later left and moved to the literary world or the creative world of arts. Perhaps because of her experience in other parts of the world beyond the Indian border. She's an Indian who has got historical background related to Bengali, at the same time has taught the world of Chinese and the Singaporeans. So these areas we're going to be exploring together. And I want you to follow up with us, and you get to understand how this unique creative writer has used her experience throughout this exploration of the world to also change the world with her creative pen and with the gathering of the pens of others through a borderless platform. Mitali, would you mind telling us how you started your literary activism?
Well, I wouldn't call it activism. It started when I was very young and I started writing at the age of eight or maybe even younger. And then eventually I went into journalism, and I had thought it would be like Hemingway's experience and all that, but it wasn't. It was just a career. So I chucked that up and just started writing. And I taught myself to write for 25 years. But I must say, while doing journalism, I had a fantastic mentor, few fantastic mentors, Ratnottama Jaksuraya, Chandan Mitra, Dilip Padgaonkar. These are all major journalists from Times of India where I worked. And some of them are no more, but they were fantastic. And they, to an extent, especially Ratnottama Sengupta, she brought me into the, taught me practically how to unlearn the kind of writing I was doing and relearn how to write to convey well. And then from there, I took on and I used to just sit and write, compiled. Then I moved from India, I'd moved to Singapore. I'd stayed in a number of countries over a period of time. And then I moved to China in 2006 with my full family. And that was my eye-opener. I discovered that there is a world beyond borders, a borderless world, a world that, you and I have the same concern. Will we get coronavirus? Will our children do well in school? Will our children grow up to be good human beings? How will they earn? These are concerns that all humans have. And these override the color, race, and class. So then I started writing about that. So I did a book of essays, this one, on China. And Actually, it was actually about how what I discovered in China, the fact that there is a borderless world and that we are beyond all this. I had this Italian friend, and she told me that think of me as a friend. Why do you think of a country? And that was a real education. So from then on, I started writing about a borderless world. And when I came back to Singapore, I had more internet than you get in China. So I actually managed to. I started working with. I started writing rather with Kitab. I started doing reviews for them. Zafar Anjum, the founder of Kitab, he saw my writing in my blog and asked me to review for them. So I started doing book reviews. And then I went through a couple of family issues, including the death of my father, which kind of I needed a support. And then suddenly we came back to, I he had this position of the editor of Kitab vacant at that point, so I joined in. And when I joined in, I discovered a wealth of Southeast Asian literature as well as Asian. Because most of the time till then, I had been reading just Western, but there is really a wealth of literature here, and people who have similar outlook that we have an open world. And now I have started my own magazine called Borderless, borderlessjournal.com.
So how about your academic life?
Okay, I did my master's from Delhi University, and then I did journalism while doing my master's, and then I did specialized in economic development studies at Oslo University. I got a fellowship there, thanks to Times of India and Delhi University, to do economic development studies. So I wanted to specialize in economic development studies. And when I came back, one of the things I learned during the course, however, was that when we were brought to the course, we were expected to go back and tell them the Scandinavian model was the best, which I don't think is a reality because, we all have our own cultures, whether it's yours or whether it's mine, it's like individual cultures. And we have to evolve the developmental needs as per our culture needs, not, I mean, what they are talking of is kind of a cultural colonialism, which is also not all right. So that was part of the deal, but then I learned a lot of other things. And then I came back, I worked for some time, got married, and we moved out to Singapore. So
Tell us about your experience outside India.
I love Singapore. And I actually enjoy living in most countries. And I have heard Singapore is draconian, but to me, it is only disciplined enough so that I can work in peace and think in peace. Because to flourish, for arts to flourish, you need peace. You cannot have, though a lot of artists do come up to develop, express angst, even I do in my poetry at times. But having the distance is always an advantage, I feel, for me. Because then I can read, I can see different perspectives, and then I can react.
So how many languages do you speak?
I speak Bengali, Hindi, English, bit of Mandarin, very bad. I studied French at school, but now I say je ne parle pas français, je parle anglais. Because I do not speak French, I speak English.
So how would you compare the general theme of creative writing in Singapore to that of India?
Well, in India, you have to realize is a much bigger country with many more writers and a very old literary heritage. Whereas in Singapore, you have a smaller group. I think till the 1990s, people were not really thinking of writing so much as surviving. They were a tiny little island who were thrown out of Malaysia because, because of colonial politics. And the I mean, there's a whole history there. So there's the historic need of the emperor and the colonial politics finally separated Singapore. And for a long time, they were just struggling to get survive. So the focus was more on economic activities, and on clearing up the place, maintaining certain amount of discipline, like the Singapore River, which is so beautiful now, and you can cruise down it. And I mean, it's really a pleasure to look at. Used to be very smelly and filthy in the 70s, so they had a river cleaning drive. There are books on it. There's this writer called Su Chen. She's written a lot of Su Chen Kristin Lim. She has written a lot of books. Then there's Isa Kamari. He has written a lot of books. Of course, I was not around to know. So there are times which was before my birth. But through 70s and 80s, they were really struggling and developing. So when I came to Singapore the first time in 1991, the only glimpse I had of Singapore before that was in a lecture slide of of a professor called Bjorn Hetne in Oslo. And he showed Singapore as an with inappropriate development, one side big houses, the other side slums. To this date, I have not seen that. But so by 1990, so what he had probably seen was very old. So, but to get over that, here every single person has a house. To almost everybody. There are some people who don't have houses still because they got thrown out, they were in prison, families don't want them back. But majority of people, have homes. And the children have access to schooling, clean water, food. The government is very caring. I can't see it as draconian, really. I mean, neither China nor Singapore, because I think if you look at it, what do you call the freedom of the human spirit? Tagore used to say, "Kothao amar hariye jawa nei mana mone mone," which means, this is in Bengali, that I will not forget, I can get lost anywhere in my mind. That with my mind, I can go anywhere. And if you go into Dostoevsky's notes from the underground, you will see the same thing. So you have to see that freedom is a state of being. So it is not looking at laws and criticizing the politicians and criticizing all this. That I feel is, it's their job to run the place. If you want to give them the job, you've elected them, then you let them do it.
I'm really interested in exploring where you are based right now, further or even far more than other parts of the globe that you've been to, India, China. Are you involved in maybe creative activism with other Singaporean writers? Or maybe in the past, or even if you are still getting involved in this activism up to now?
Many. In fact, I'm carrying one this evening in Borderless, Mark Nair. He's a well-known poet. Then Desmond sent me Desmond Con. He's another poet, very well-known. You can find essays on his book in lot of and him on lot of online forums also. So these are people who are fairly well-known. Zafar Anjum himself is a writer. Then you have plenty of them. I could keep naming them.
To round this part up, I want us to look at the publishing activities or publishing world of the Asian world that you've been to, India, China, and Singapore. How can you compare the publishing activities in these countries?
India has a theme, and neither can you say Singapore has a theme. Because if you think of it, Indians, they have issues with, right now I'm seeing a lot of online literature on CAA, which is the Amendment Act these people have done on migration and all that. on migrants coming in, distressed refugees coming in, and all that. So there's a lot of writing on that. There's writing about other tensions that they are facing within the country. In Singapore, those tensions are not there. So writers have a different focus. And each one of them writes differently. So if you go into books like Suchan's, you will actually find the full history of Singapore and Malaya. If you go to read Izakamari, you will again find the Malay side, because he used to write in Malay. He's written just one book in English. So in fact, he critiques very often the Islamic concepts in a couple of books like Intercession, like what do you say, Kiswa. He has severely critiqued Islamic practices, so of different kinds, marriage, then just radical outlooks and all that. So he's doing all that. Then you have, you have people who talk of emotions. You have people who talk of discontent with government moves. Where are artists not discontent with government? Tell me, whether it's India or Singapore. So you have that also. So you have all kinds, if you see. If you think of it, there is all kinds. You even have younger writers like Kaitan and all who are into dark fiction. There's a lot of dark fiction lore in Singapore. So, and they have a group called Singlet. So, they in fact had a fair from 7th to 14th, 15th. I did not, of course, dare to go. But Kitab went. Zafar was out there with his family. I'm too scared to go down with COVID-19 and all that. My younger son has his grade 10 exams this year, so I can't really afford to get quarantined or something. I need to be really careful. But they went, a lot of people went. I think Desmond had workshops and all that. So you have a whole bunch of writers here, and every writer needs to be respected, and they have a different perspective. Some write about their personal angst, some write about more social angst, different things.
All right, I think we need to go for a break. Thank you for that exploration. Yeah, it's obvious that India will always be having more opportunities, because when you talk about literary world of art, it's more in India than any other part of the Asian world. No doubt about that. So before we go to the second part of this show, I want us to go for a break. When we come back, we shall be exploring the world of this great writer. See you then.
Hello out there. Tune in to CBA TV, the voice of East Africa and beyond. There's so many people around the world who are watching along with you.
Welcome back to the second part of this wonderful show, Artflakes. If you are joining us for the first time, Artflakes is the only show in the entire Africa, not only in East Africa, where issues affecting humanity discussed in detail through creative mind from different parts of the globe, not only in Africa, but in Asia, in Middle East, in America, and even in European world. So if you are joining us for the first time, we're with Mitali. Mitali is the writer from the Asian world. She's exploring the Asian literary world because she's from India. She traveled to the other part of Asian world, China, and now she's based in Singapore. So we'll be exploring our world today. So Mitali, how would you describe yourself as a writer,
That's a very difficult question. I write because I love birds, because there is sunshine in the sky, and because I breathe. So lines normally, especially for poetry, lines just come to me and I need to put them down. If I don't put them down, they can get lost. And if lines keep getting lost, I will be very angry at the end of the day and shouting at everybody. So it is better that I put them down and then later I work on them. I bring in more images, more things, because your first output is never really fully complete. Very rarely is it. Sometimes it happens, but very rarely. But initially, you have to put down whatever's coming into, be it a novel, be it a story, anything. You have to just put it down, whether it's an essay, uh, even a review. If you don't put it down, it's like you throttle your being. So you write because you're driven by some compulsion, which you cannot describe. Maybe I would call it divine inspiration, like Tagore does, Michelangelo does. But what I have seen of the current world is moderns are scared of acknowledging divinity post existentialism, post Sartre, post Camus, post World War, post absurdist, post whatever. But the fact remains that we cannot explain why we are born, what breathes life into us, and what gives us, succor. Because it could be a source of energy, you can call it what you will, but I feel that is what drives people to do what they do. So if I'm putting it down, I personally feel it is not me as an ego or as a self who is putting down the words, but something that comes to me and makes me do it, you know. So why they've chosen me and not my kids or my husband or my friends, I don't know. I do have a lot of friends and all that, but they're not necessarily literary. But which is why I'm saying this, that it is something I can't answer.
Actually, you've said everything without saying anything or without saying everything. So viewers at home would have known more about why you write from your little exploration of your reason for writing. Thank you. I want us to go into your publications. Tell us more about some of the literary publications or creative writing publications that you've had so far since the beginning of your exploration of the creative world.
Yeah, I have written a book of essays called In the Land of Dragons. That's based on our lives in China. And it's an interesting book in the sense that it is funny. I had a lot of fun bringing up my kids and meeting people. So it's basically that. So some people have asked me for a sequel. So I've written a sequel online, but it's not long enough to make into a book. So maybe at some point I will sit down, rehash, add it all up, and then do it. Then I have a lot of poetry in anthologies, and I have translated one verse novel from English to from Hindi to English. One of my mentors called Dr. Uma Trilok. She, in fact, she brought me into hard publishing in 2016. She insisted I publish my poetry, and she was bringing out an anthology. She published it. She saw my own online work again, and she was introduced to me by another very good friend. So then I have. I translate another guy called Navendu Ghosh from Bengali to English. So I have one short story in one book, another one's coming out this year, and I'm doing another novella of his, which will probably come out next year. So I actually did 36 pages of translation in 4 days. So I was amazed at myself.
You have done a lot in the literary world. You've published work individually. You've gathered together with other writers across the group to publish work. I feel because of time, we will not be able to explore your world in detail for this show. We'll have to come next time to discuss in detail. So this might be where we're going to put the curtain of this show today. But next time, we're still going to go back to this great writer. There are things within her life that I will want to discuss with us. And I want her to explore that world. She mentioned journalism. We don't know why she left journalism. We don't know why she quitted. At the same time, what has she been doing? Some of her literary work, initiative and others will be explored in detail in the next show. See you then. Thank you for watching CBA.